Live from the International AIDS Society conference here in Rio. We are just a few steps away from the stands that Gilead, ViiV, and MSD have at this conference. So there's probably no better place to talk about innovation, but also to talk about access. This year's conference has been marked by a debate. Innovation is good, but as the opening session made clear, innovation without access becomes privilege. In our last roundtable, our speakers also emphasized the need to build manufacturing capacity in Africa and innovation capacity to ensure sustainable supply of technologies and medications. Today, we have three fantastic speakers to talk to us about how scientific innovation can accelerate the progress towards the end of AIDS in Africa, but also how to overcome the inequalities that have defined HIV and the response to HIV since its inception. We're going to start with some opening remarks by the Society for AIDS in Africa President, Dr. Richard Nchabi Kambi.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Moderator James Garcia of the University of Edinburgh, colleagues, board members, Luke, the Director for ICASA, distinguished speakers, colleagues, partners, members of the global health community, and participants joining us from around the globe. Good afternoon, and welcome to this roundtable discussion with the theme, Innovation and Access, the Future of Ending AIDS, hosted by the Society for AIDS in Africa, in partnership with the University of Edinburgh. For decades, the global HIV response has demonstrated what is possible when science, advocates, communities, and political commitment come together. From the expansion of life-saving antiretroviral therapy to advances in prevention and diagnostics, progress has transformed HIV from a global health crisis into a condition that millions of people can now manage with effective care. However, the next phase of the HIV response will require us to ask new questions. Scientific innovation continues to accelerate, creating new opportunities to improve prevention, treatment, and care. Long-active technologies, new prevention approaches, and advances in research are reshaping how we think about the future of HIV. But innovation alone is not enough. The true measure of progress is whether these advances reach the people and communities who need them most. Access, affordability, health system capacity, financing, policy environments, and community engagement will determine whether scientific breakthroughs translate into meaningful public health impact. This conversation is particularly important for Africa. The continent has not only been at the center of the HIV response, but is increasingly becoming a driver of research, innovation, and health leadership. African researchers, institutions, and communities continue to contribute to clinical research, evidence generation, and the development of solutions that reflect local realities. As we look towards the future, Africa must remain a key partner in shaping global health innovation, not only as a recipient of new tools, but as a leader in creating and implementing solutions. Today's discussions brings together voices from science, policy, and civil society to explore some of the most important questions facing the future of HIV. What are these questions? How can innovation be translated into equitable access? How can health systems prepare for emerging technologies? And lastly, how can we ensure that scientific progress reduces rather than widens existing inequalities? The journey towards ending AIDS will not be defined by scientific discovery alone. It will be defined by our collective ability to ensure that progress reaches every community. Thus, I look forward to the insights and perspectives that will emerge from today's conversation. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. And the way this conversation is going to go, each of our three speakers will have 3 to 5 minutes to talk about sort of their response to the idea of innovation access and the debates in Africa. And then we'll take questions from the audience. You can use the Q&A function that you will find in your Zoom window to write your questions, and we'll take some of those questions for the speakers. So I'm going to first introduce my colleague, Lucille Butler, who I'm very grateful has found time to be here despite having a very busy agenda here at IAS. She's technical head for programming and implementation at WITS RHI in Johannesburg, South Africa, and she leads and maintains oversight of sexual and reproductive health and HIV prevention programs on adolescent and young women. She also leads the market shaping portfolio that is working to reduce access barriers and facilitate accelerated access to quality assured, long-acting PrEP generics. Still, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction and the opportunity to be part of this discussion. And interestingly, as I was reflecting on what I will cover in the 3 to 5 minutes that you have given us, just thinking of the points that I came up with, they align with what the first speaker that was introducing the roundtable laid out. And just to outline my context has really been in HIV prevention. We focused, and when I say we, I'm talking about WITS RHI, which is an institute of the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. We focused a lot on programs on adolescent girls and young women, but also a broader population. So in terms of, I think what is topical right now is lenacapavir, right? And it's very exciting and potentially a game-changing innovation. And it brings us closer to ending HIV as a public health threat. However, it's the product. We need to do more. That's the science, but the science needs support. And there are different levels of innovation from my perspective that I felt points that I would make and share with you. First is innovation in demand creation and community engagement. People cannot choose a prevention method they've never heard of or do not understand. As new prevention options become available, we must continue investing in community education, addressing myths and misinformation, and reducing stigma. And I think the innovation around that comes in terms of the platforms that are used to create demand. So social platforms, your Facebook, Instagram, etc. And we've used that successfully in programming. I think a second dimension of innovation is in health system integration, where new products, new innovations, biomedical innovations are not introduced as vertically, but they need to be fully integrated into existing systems to make sure that when users come for other ailments, they are offered and we reach as many people as possible. A third innovation is in service delivery, that diversifying how you offer the service and where you offer it, which is another dimension of choice if you think about it. So we offer the basket of choice in terms of the product, biomedical, but we offer a choice in terms of where it's offered, who's offering the service, and how it's offered. Then the other dimension of innovation I wanted to touch on is around market shaping, which is one of the hats that I wear at RHI. And shaping the market for the development and just availability of quality generic products. Working with manufacturers, reducing the price, making sure that the products are of an acceptable quality and they're available quickly. I think lenacapavir has demonstrated that so far in terms of the rate of the rapid processes that have been followed in terms of regulatory filing, etc. So that has shown some innovation in terms of, bringing it to market. Then finally, I wanted to make the point of involving people, getting people involved, not so much in innovation, but really a core tenet, a central tenet of how you make innovations work. You can bring the biomedical product, but if people, communities, individuals are not involved in your processes, it's going to fail. So those are the 5 points I just wanted to make, a few points I wanted to make around innovation to start the conversation. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. We are having some music here. So I don't know how much you can hear it. That was really, really good. I'm gonna go now to Dr. Abeline Foban, who's the Deputy Secretary General for the Society for AIDS in Africa. It's a special career fighting against HIV across a number of settings, from virology labs to the Institute de Research to the development. And he's also received the Leather Garrett Clayton Prize. So we're going to go to Abeline now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be part of this second round table around the topic of innovation and access in Africa, and how we can use take advantage of the innovation to move toward the future of a continent, a world without AIDS. And I will say that my topic will be focusing on the key tools that we have today to reach this goal of ending AIDS. In my opinion, as of today, antiretroviral treatment has been a tremendous improvement, and the key rule changes on the current landscape of ending AIDS. And we cannot talk about antiretroviral access without talking about the entry to the treatment, which is the diagnostic, and finally the key component that is the prevention. Then, starting with the antiretroviral treatment, there have been lots of innovations since they used the utilizations of the first drugs decades ago. There have been improvement in terms of combinations, in terms of treatment efficacy, and what has been done as of today in Africa has been to make sure that all these drugs can work in the continent and work in the specific area of Africa. For example, taking into account genetic diversity of the viruses. At the beginning, most of the drugs were developed against the viruses circulating in the developed world, in industrialized countries. And these viruses were not the same type circulating in Africa. And innovations was in trying to make sure that these drugs will be efficient against the viral types circulating in Africa was one of the key fights at the beginning. As of today, that has not been, the situation has changed dramatically. But in the continent, we need new generation of scientists to continue working on this aspect, making sure that the new drugs, the new tools that we are using as long-acting drugs and others will be effective against the strains circulating on the continent. We have HIV-2. I can say that it's one of the neglected virus today. The HIV-2 in West Africa, we have some specific strands of the HIV-1 group O, that we know are naturally resistant to many drugs. We should make sure that the new tools that we are using for the PrEP, for the including long-acting PrEPs, also are effective against these types of viruses. This is part of the thing that we need to take into consideration in terms of innovation, especially in the area of the treatment. Also considering that we have the long-acting drugs today, but currently access is the key problem in the continent. And trying to develop strategy to have access by generic formulations, as my colleague has just said previously. Generic formulations are key. We cannot really think about the wide expansion of long-acting without considering how this will be affordable for the continent. But on the other hand, how are we going to protect these drugs? If I take the lenacapavir drugs, for example, it is a very fragile drug in terms of drug resistance. Then we need to make sure that we are developing strategy to protect the drugs that we are having, including the long-acting. Then innovation should, protection of the drugs that we have and the strategies that we have must be part of the innovation. This means we should develop strategies to prevent emergence of drug resistance. It means we should prevent treatment failure, and this means we should also improve access to other very useful tools that we have today as viral load testing. We have access to viral load testing to do it, but at which stage do we have access to viral load testing? At the remote and peripheral region is still a very, very big challenge to have people accessing the viral load testing at the regular basis. The cost is still a major issue. And even if on the continent, it has been a lot of work on how we can develop alternative strategy for sample collection from the remote areas to the place where the laboratory implements it. But what we have seen is that without a decentralized and effective decentralized policy of the laboratories, of the care system, we cannot really move into that effective, future of ending AIDS. We need the tools. We need generic tools to make sure that not only the capital cities, but also the rural regions, the peripheral regions are also having access to this tool, especially tools as viral load testing. Diagnosis is the entry point for prevention, is the entry point for treatment. Then one of the biggest innovation to us of today has been the development of rapid testing, and the rapid testing have considerably changed the rules of HIV diagnosis. People can be diagnosed and have a result within a few minutes. And we do need more improvement in this field because over time there have been, some weaknesses in terms of the quality of the testings. These are parts that should be also considered of the future investigation, making sure that we not only use the tools we have today, but we are making sure that these tools are still effective over time and developing surveillance program to take that into consideration. Then, in addition to the current strategy, today we have the major tools that we need to prevent AIDS. We have treatment not only as an individual treatment to control viral replication, but also as a tool to prevent transmission of the virus. This is the biggest innovation and improvement in the HIV field, in my opinion, as of today. But we should think about the future. The future includes that we still have a place for conventional prevention strategies. We do not stop researches on vaccines. This is critical for the future. Although by the meantime, we still have other options as immune therapy that has been also studied on the continent. We do have options as seeing how with the long-acting drugs, we can develop strategy looking at the vaccine strategies, but using the treatment that we have today. Then in my opinion, innovation today is taking advantage of what we already have, making sure that we improve it, making sure that we still continue to build laboratory systems and healthcare systems that are turning for the future and making sure that they are really working efficiently, we should also think about building the human capacity. And building human capacity not only means training few people, but really looking at the curricula of training at the university to take into account not only HIV, but other infectious challenges that we are having on the continent. This fight will not only include HIV as a sole objective. We should take into consideration the landscape of the infectious disease globally, because most of the time, the same tools are used for all these diseases, and improving one will help others. We can just take into the example of the COVID crisis and how this have the improvement in the COVID vaccine development is already helping also for other diseases, including HIV. This is my opinion, what we should focus on. And there are there are remaining for other issues as the funding issue. And as scientists, we need funds for research. We need funds for to improve access to the tools that we are developing. We need funding to adapt the tools to the field and to those who really need them most. Then I think, in my opinion, these are the points on which we should focus in addition to the others. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to hear you talk about the relationship between HIV and other viruses like COVID, and also talk about the larger landscape. And it was great to also hear you talk about the need to make sure that prevention technologies and technologies are not only available in capital cities, but also in rural and peripheral areas. After talking about market shaping and about health system integration, and then talking about technologies and how to ensure that they work for the realities, both epidemiological and biological, of the HIV pandemic in Africa and the need to train people and deliver better technology, we go to Sibongile Tashabalala, who is the chairperson of the Treatment Action Campaign. She joined Treatment Action Campaign in 2009, and since 2017, she has been the national chairperson. She has been living with HIV for around 20 years, and for those of you who don't know, Treatment Action Campaign is a historic South African activist organization founded in 1998 to improve access to HIV treatment, and became famous for campaigning against the government denialism, and successfully pressuring authorities to provide life-saving antiretroviral medication. It is today widely respected as combining public protest, legal action, and community education. So we are profoundly honored to have Sibongile with us today. Sibongile, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm still audible. Thank you for having me on this webinar, and thank you for the speakers, and I will stand on the protocol that has been already observed. I will speak mostly about the scientific breakthroughs and also the structural challenges that we are facing, and how have we been playing a role as communities. Firstly, it's very important for us as communities also to acknowledge the game-changing and innovations that have been happening. Yes, we are talking about LEN, which is a long-acting PrEP, which we know there are challenges of access. Yes, South Africa is one of the countries that has had a donation of Global Fund, but the question that we still struggling with as communities is to say, these innovations are here, are they sustainable? Will all the communities be able to access the preventative methods that they want? We know that there are studies, especially that are talking to broadly neutralizing antibodies and single tablet regimens, which are happening in countries like South Africa, here in Cape Town and in Durban, Johannesburg, in the US, Europe, and other African countries like Zimbabwe, Uganda, and Malawi. those innovations are happening in our space. But when it comes to issues of access, it's another issue of which I will come back to it. But also we're advocating for a point of care technology where we know that there were HIV tests that were available where people, they were able to test themselves, but there was a disalignment in between because these people were testing themselves, but they were not reporting to the clinic. So how do we link those people who are testing themselves at home and link them to clinic? But we say also we need to empower communities or individuals to monitor their status privately. If we are able to check with the rapid viral load test assays, and so we can be able to do that. As communities, we have been doing this for quite some time, since the time of HIV, when we fought for ARVs and using scientific breakthrough to make sure that our communities are accessing ARVs. And we believe that that can be done also even today. Activists they always ensure that the new technologies are reaching out most vulnerable places and dismantling the barriers of stigma and healthcare. And they always reach out even those deep rural areas in our countries to make sure that people are accessing services. However, now I'm coming to the structural challenges that we have. Access and inequality, it's something I think my colleagues have been talking about, that there are a lot of barriers in terms of pricing. Lenacapavir has taught us, and we've been saying this. We remember also during the time of COVID, when countries like ours were at the last of the queue to receive COVID-19 vaccines. Even now, while these trials are happening in our countries, but we are in the last on the queue because the price, its access, the licensing, a patent, reforms or frameworks that are there are not talking to us. So the voluntary licensing agreements that are happening, at the end of the day, we are still under those pharmaceutical companies. Like, for instance, now Gilead still detects to say who has the right to voluntary licensing and who has not, and how the countries need to manufacture their own lenacapavir, which that is a very serious challenge for us because it doesn't give countries the ability to detect, to say how much will they want lenacapavir to be priced. And also issues of access in terms of the healthcare systems. We know that our clinics are very small. The infrastructure is problematic. The healthcare workers sometimes are not well trained. So it makes it difficult for innovations like lenacapavir to access the communities that they need, while I'm still talking to the price. And in South Africa, I want to say it there, we still have the draft IP bill that is still sitting with the Department of Trade and Industry, which is another delay that makes us communities and us not to access a lot of medications that we're supposed to receive. So though this is not only happening in South Africa, but most of the countries in Africa. So what we need as communities, this decentralized service delivery, that is very important, and we have seen that it is working. So we need to integrate long-acting tools into community hubs, and that will reduce burden in tertiary facilities or in clinics, so that people can be able to administer lenacapavir and have access where maybe people who are uncomfortable to go to health settings, they can be able to receive it. And we need to reimagine global governance. We need to move from donor dependency to sustain African manufacturing and trade alliance. As I'm talking here, I was very lucky to be one of the people who were assessing the pharmaceutical companies that's supposed to manufacture len in South Africa. I found out very interesting information. Most of the South African companies that are only South African based or African based, they don't have capacity, even if they do have capacity, but they don't have a support from the government. We have one company in Africa that is able to manufacture API, but that company is not supported by any of our governments in Africa, although our governments are talking about local manufacturing in Africa, but it's not really supported. So as activists now, we need to push to say those pharmaceutical companies who are Africa-based, who are local based, they need to be supported. They can't depend on the external funding, and they can't close shops just because they don't have a market to manufacture or to sell the drugs that we need as communities. Community-led monitoring, initiatives like reshape has assisted us to show how we can track the services, the waiting time, supply chain, stock out, care quality in facilities, and it has opened doors for communities and government to be able to talk about the challenges that communities are facing on the ground. And lastly, I want to talk about the universal, ensuring that we have universal reach. So we have partner policies. So these policies, they need to talk to the marginalized population that that are supposed to receive innovations without delay. So as I'm ending, because I have limited time, I want to end with this quote that says, health is a fundamental human right, not a luxury. When public healthcare system fails, it is the poorest and the most vulnerable who pay with their lives. We must keep fighting until every person receives the care and dignity they deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was great hearing you talk about the realities of both developing and delivering technology like LAN in countries like South Africa. We are starting to have some questions in the Q&A, but I would like to first pose a question to all three speakers. And as a social scientist, maybe the question is a bit less usual than what you hear, but bear with me, right? So much of what we've seen at this conference for the past few days here in Rio has been around new technologies, and that also has been the center of a lot of your conversation, LAN, and also AI, artificial intelligence, and other technologies. But we already have a wide host of simple interventions, like community-led testing, reliable access to condoms, removing user fees, and strengthening adherence support, and others that can have major impact on AIDS and the AIDS epidemic, and don't need massive multi-billion-dollar investment and licensing deals. Are we placing too much emphasis on technological innovation and forgetting some of the very basic interventions that we have that are effective, but that maybe don't have the shiny appeal of new injectables or new technologies?
Yeah. I think that you put it well. Shiny thing draws a lot of attention, but we need not forget about the things, and I'm talking about either diagnostics or other prep methods, prevention methods that have worked well, and ways of providing the service. So we really need to lean in to the things that have worked before, and continue to adapt those to work with the new methods. There is a thing about if you throw too many new things at something, you may overwhelm it. And that's a personal perspective. And I think to a certain extent, we need to be a little bit careful about that, and make sure that we keep doing what has worked and just add the new pieces to it. And also just respond contextually. So what works in one, say, geographic area may not necessarily work in another geographic area or country. And so we need to make sure that we contextualize for the area that those services, the program, or whatever it is being provided. And I think that will go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. Sibunjile or Abilene?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what the colleague has just said right now. What is really frustrating, I would say, today on the fight against AIDS is that, to be honest, we have many tools. We have a lot of tools available, and we are not really taking advantage of all these tools appropriately. And the reasons there are several reasons, but I think that the problem is that depending on the side on which we are, we can be frustrated because, once you have developed a strategy in the lab, if there is no implementation on the field, this strategy will be, we say, almost useless. But on the other hand, if you have seen what we are calling today the operational research is what? We not only develop a strategy in the laboratory, but we go on the field and we test it. And once we test it, we say, okay, it can work. But after that, we need someone else to take the, to take the next step. And then we are talking to the decision makers, we are talking to the national programs, we are talking to the policies to make sure that it is implemented on the field. There is one question on the chat that can rely on that, on how we can improve diagnostic and avoid errors. 20 years ago, there was a surveillance program, to make sure that the new testing are assessed in the country, to make sure that the test will work, because it can work in country A and not work in country B. And each country should take, should adapt the testing on its own local epidemiological situation, including the virus circulating and so on. But at some extent, we know that the majority of the policy can, are not really different. We have the same backbone, but we need some adaptation in different contexts in different countries. And it's where I think that there should be a better, interaction between everyone, the medical, the clinical, the laboratory, the implementation programs, the governments. Sometimes we lack this interaction to make sure that we are talking the same language, we are going into the same direction. And we have a lot of tools today. The key issue, in my opinion, is to make sure that the access improves. And once access is improved, to develop strategy to test what is going on, the results, and how we can improve over time. With the current tools, we can do that.
Thank you. Sibunjile, do you have anything else to add? Sorry, you're muted.
Okay.
No.
Yes. Yeah, I've been looking at the questions here on the chat, and yes, we can't bury our hands on the sand. Yeah, on the sand, and we are sinking as Africans because all the time we are last in the queue, and we need the voice of communities in all this, because we learned that the voice of community is very strong in terms of advocating for better services and for better policies and implementation of those policies in country. When I'm talking about local manufacturing, I think all the sub-Saharan Africa governments are talking about that. But where is the support? When are they going to put their money where their mouth is? Because they are talking about it. Yes, it's very political, but if we can't push it, we can't dismantle that political. We need to make it being implemented than being just political, an issue that governments will just take a stand and talk about it as if it's something that we are enjoying to hear. We want to see manufacturing companies being supported by our own governments in our own continent.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question from some of the things that you have there. Let me just check. So all three of you have talked a lot about community and the need to involve community in ensuring the delivery of these innovations.
Mm.
My question is, are we sort of assuming that community comes after the innovation? Shouldn't it be the other way around, where community is leading innovation and not allowing pharma companies or technologies to generate something and then expect community to do the hard and often unpaid work of delivering it out there? Have we allowed the horses to go before the cart in some of these conversations?
Can I start as a community? So, yes, that is always that it's happening, and that's how we always feel as communities. Like, for instance, when there are trials happening, when the researchers are applying for the grant, we are not included on the grant application. We don't determine to say, as community voice in those trials, how much or how many resources that we will need to educate communities. We are only put on the last when the grant request has been submitted, or we are just asked to write letters of support, but we are not included in the initial stage of drafting that grant so that we understand why that innovation has to happen and we play a role from there. Like, for instance, today I'm coming from a meeting where we were talking about prevention and we're talking about TB today. It was my first time learning that there is a vaccine that prevents TB that is coming, and it's in final stage of its trial. So as community, if I'm going to hear that now at the last stage, when am I going to go back to my communities, my constituency, and educate them about this vaccine so that by the time the vaccine comes in, we don't have those resistance that we had during the time of COVID. Remember, people, they have a lot of perceptions around vaccines. And we know that anti-vaccines groups are working very hard to stop people from using vaccines. But if these innovations are not communicated at the earlier stage with us as communities, then it becomes difficult. As I'm sitting here every day, I'm getting calls. People are saying, lenacapavir is for people who are HIV negative. When are we getting our long injectable ARVs as people living with HIV? Because we are treatment fatigue. We are tired of taking the pill. We need, at least for us, also we need a 1 monthly pill that is still on trial. When is it? But if you can ask me, how far are these trials? I'm not sure where I am. I have to go and dig that information. That information is not publicly known so that we can educate our communities and prepare them for the better or the innovations that are coming. So communities need to be at the initial stage up to the end stage. We can't just rope us in just to keep it, to tick the box to say, yeah, we had community advisory board and communities were part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Evelyn or Christina?
Cindy, I attended a session before this this roundtable today. One of the comments that was made was that communities should actually be involved in the design of the study, of the clinical trial, right? So it's even pulling the involvement of communities earlier in the process, and to make things such as post-trial access clearer. So that point really resonated with me in that session, and it's echoing what Mwile is saying here.
Thank you. Any comments from you? Yes.
Yeah, I won't be too long. I can just say that we should take, we should learn, we should take lessons from the previous for other situations. As the colleague has just said, we have this the case of COVID vaccine. We have also other cases that we can talk about as the Ebola vaccine. And these lessons shows that if the community are not involved at the beginning, at the end, we can have a product that won't be effective because there is no buy-in. People are not identify themselves as being part of that. Then it's something that has been improved over time, but in my opinion, should be also reinforced in the future.
Thank you. And we are now reaching the end of today. It has been absolutely fantastic to hear your opinions on how do we make sure that innovation has communities at the center, but also is delivered in ways that are sustainable, that are responsive to the contexts where that innovation is to be delivered, that are integrated, and that also take into account the whole structure into which these innovations are delivered, from clinical capacity to communities and innovation manufacturing capacity. We will have another roundtable in a couple months about the end of AIDS as well. But before we let you go, we would like to invite you to the ICASA conference that is happening from the 5th to the 9th of December in the Benin Republic. You will find more information on the website of the Society for AIDS in Africa, and we look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you so much to our speakers today and to the Society for AIDS in Africa.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank
It
you.
was a great time. Thank you very much.